So it's right around 10 p.m. on Friday, July 12th, 2024. I'm going to pull rank here and cut the ditzy act and just state exactly what's going on. This is an area where a lot of low IQ, low functioning people live. There is a police station right around the corner from here who panders to the lowest common denominator. They see these people, even if they are criminals, as the people they are supposed to serve. They see people such as myself as the bad guys, even though I verifiably do not have any kind of mental health history. That's a medical and scientific fact, regardless of what these pathetic idiot, no life, low lives think, regardless of what type of smear campaign the Greenville group are trying to wage, and they have been for years. I mean, 5 years ago, the cops were convinced that I was a hooker. That's kind of funny. I am so broke. If I was actually a hooker, I would have not been living in this place, that's for sure. I'd be earning, I don't know what, way more than I was earning in retail and in customer service. Probably earning way more than I was earning at my consulting position that I had just before the pandemic. So let's talk about education, intelligence, and mental health. It is very difficult to obtain the academic degrees and professional achievements that I have verifiably obtained since college if you are mentally ill. I've never been mentally ill. I've always been completely functional. I have never had any kind of clinical mental health issues. Does everybody have a bad day once in a while? Yes. Do some people have a bad week? Yes. Anything more than a bad week, and then you need to go see a psychologist, and that's a fact. I would know. I have a PhD ABD in clinical developmental psychology, and my thesis for my PhD program was published nationally, given a 7 out of 7 national rating, and was selected for presentation at the National Convention of the American Psychological Association in San Francisco. I was also working as a research scientist concurrently while pursuing my PhD in clinical developmental psychology, and I was working as a research scientist at Harvard Medical School. Am I crazy? Absolutely not. You cannot spend 6 years in a full-time PhD program for clinical psychology and be literally rubbing elbows with an entire faculty of PhD level clinical psychologists, and clinical psychologist implies having a PhD. You cannot be a clinical psychologist at the master's level. You have to have a PhD. You cannot spend 6 years of your life every day for 6 years with clinical psychologists and somehow have mental health issues that nobody knows about. That's not possible. You spend like 8 hours a day with the faculty. You spend day after day, week after week, month after month with the faculty. I started my PhD program when I was 30. By the time you're 22, if you have any mental health issues, those are evident. There is no such thing as mental health disorders that suddenly develop when you're 30 or when you're 40. Okay, let's just get that clear. Anybody who thinks so does not understand the neurodevelopment of the human brain. And Googling it is not going to help you, you pathetic retards who troll my channel because you've got no fucking lives. You sad, wasted, rejected, ignorant trolls. Trolling is a mental health issue, by the way. People who can't leave other people alone are the ones who are crazy. And that is a clinical disorder. Stalking is a clinical disorder. It goes hand in hand with multiple comorbid other cluster B personality disorders and probably, Axis 1 disorders as well. Axis 1 disorders are major disorders that a lot of the residents of this building complex seem to suffer from. I know what an Axis 1 disorder is because I had to memorize a DSM-4 TR while I was in my PhD program. I had to take an entire year of doctoral level psychology diagnosis. It was called psych diagnosis, where you literally had to memorize the entire DSM for an entire year. My grade in that class was an A+. I have a memory like a steel trap. I actually have a photographic memory. I also have a IQ that is not quite at the genius level, but it is in the 98th percentile, which means that I am more intelligent than 98% of the rest of the population, and that's a fact. When I was doing my neuropsychology training at the Lemuel Shattuck Hospital, we had to practice IQ testing and other types of neuropsychological testing on each other as students, as practicum students, as clinical trainees. So other clinical trainees in the PhD program tested my IQ. I was in the 98th percentile easily. It was like 98.7, which means I'm close to the 99th percentile in terms of IQ. Can you be really intelligent and also have mental health issues? You sure can. But it's very hard to have mental health issues and be working 3 jobs, as I did for the 6 years that I was in my PhD program. I was working 3 jobs, 7 days a week, literally 24 hours a day. I would show up at work sometimes at 11 p.m. and not leave until 3 or 4 in the morning. And when you're a lab scientist, you can do that. You can show up at the lab and run your experiments overnight. And sometimes that's what I had to do. Then I would go to my other job as a clinical research assistant for a neuropsychological testing practice. And that was a private neuropsych practice in Brookline, and then do psych testing on patients. Then my third job was working in retail. So while you can be high IQ and, suffer from a major disorder such as bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or, pervasive developmental disorder or autism, I do not have any of those disorders. That's a verifiable fact. My medical records will reflect this. I have seen probably, close to 100 doctors in my 51 years on this earth, and not a single doctor that I have seen legitimately has ever suggested that I go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I've always managed to get whatever issue I was dealing with under control very quickly. I owe that to my parents. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Because as a very young kid, as a toddler, they put me in some very rigorous training classes, ballet, gymnastics, violin, piano, voice lessons, private school, that forced me to learn discipline and mastery over your emotions. It's hard to be schizophrenic or bipolar and be a gymnast. I was a gymnast for many years. Gymnastics is all about overcoming your fear and anxiety. The balance beam is a very scary thing when you're flipping on it and it is 4 inches wide. Life is a balance beam, folks. And the balance beam was my best event. So these pathetic low-life trolls who make these retarded, ignorant, useless, and completely just like so ridiculous comments on my channel that they don't even, it's not even worth the time to read them. They are the ones who are crazy. They are the ones who are rejected. They are the ones who have severe mental health issues. They are the ones who are low IQ. They are the ones who don't have any lives. They are the ones who are verifiably everything they try so hard to make me out to be, and I never will be. I have 14 published scientific studies out there with my name on them. I have physical copies of every single scientific study I have ever been named as an author on, and I can take pictures and post them to YouTube very gladly. However, you can probably Google some of those, so knock yourselves out. Low-life scum, troll, no-life low-lifes, because that's all that trolls are. Trolls are nothing but internet stalkers, and stalking is a verifiable mental health issue. So let's talk about that. Yesterday, some very mentally disturbed, rejected piece of low-life trash who lives in this building, or in the building across the street, decided to lie to the police make a phone call and claim that I had barricaded myself in my apartment and was inhaling bleach and alcohol fumes. Really? That's weird, because I made 2 videos throughout the afternoon yesterday that I posted to YouTube between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. showing me going up and down the hallway with my door open, where I was actually keeping my door open for hours because of the nonstop marijuana fumes coming from the bathroom of Unit 78 behind the wall of my kitchen sink. There is a psychopath named Jasmine Irizarry who keeps accessing the vacant premises of her former bathroom because she is a mentally disturbed psychopath who also obsessively stalks people, and she's also on the autism spectrum. I could list every disorder that Irizarry has, and I don't even have to sit down with her and test her neuropsychologically, as I spent 2 years doing at the Shattuck Hospital at the PhD level. I don't even need to sit down with that piece of shit to know exactly what she has. Antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. She probably has autism spectrum disorder, pervasive developmental disorder. I suspect that she's also an autistic savant because she seems to be extremely astute at using technology. She is also on the autism spectrum because she becomes compulsively violent when she has knowledge of me doing certain things in my bathroom, but not others. She's also a sex offender, although that goes under several other separate diagnoses. There's no like sex offender diagnosis, unfortunately, in the DSM. But, you know, she's a sex offender. Anybody who sits in the bathroom of a vacant unit for hours using surveillance devices in the bathroom next door to hers, and then smacking the wall and blowing marijuana into that bathroom whenever that person, the resident that she's perving and creeping on, uses a toilet, well, you know, that is a unholy clusterfuck of mental health disorders. And Irizarry is an unholy clusterfuck of mental health disorders, several of which I just accurately described and named. So somebody in this building called the police and made a story, made up a lie about how I was barricading myself in this unit with bleach and rubbing alcohol. As I explained in 2 videos that I posted yesterday afternoon, I had a early morning inspectional services visit scheduled at my request for 9 a.m. today that I spent all day and part of the night cleaning this unit for. So when you're cleaning, you have to use cleaning products, you pathetic, low-life scum, retarded, hate-stalking filth. Pathetic, low-life scum, hate-stalking filth who troll my YouTube channel and then call the police when something that I post on my YouTube channel is too high level for them to understand. So then they make up a story to the police about how they saw some bleach containers on my YouTube videos and that I'm barricading myself in my unit. I mean, whoever called the police, and I will find out who it is so beyond retarded that they didn't even pick up on the fact that I was making the video about how my door was left open for hours due to the nonstop marijuana smoke from the bathroom of 78. So let's get to the police, okay? They show up at my door shortly before 8 p.m. They claim that they're doing a well-being check. My door was open when they showed up. They said that I needed to show them ID to prove that I wasn't hurting myself. Well, I was standing in the doorway talking to them. Obviously, I wasn't lying on the ground passed out. I didn't have a head injury. I didn't stab myself. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't on anything except coffee, right? Because when you're cleaning for hours, you do need a little bit of energy. Coffee does that, okay? And the stupid police insisted that I was still harming myself and that I had barricaded myself in my apartment. How do you barricade yourself if the door is open for hours and you made a video about how your door is open for hours, right? So I'm going to call the police right now and try to get some answers on why the police insisted on forcing themselves into my apartment when I made it very clear that I was perfectly fine. I was standing in front of them saying that, hey, I've got inspectional services showing up first thing in the morning. I need to clean my apartment. Am I using bleach? Of course, it's a cleaning product. I have to clean out my fridge. I have to clean the bathroom. I have to keep the window open. There's marijuana smoke filling my unit. I have to keep the door open. And the police didn't quite understand what I was trying to tell them. And they said, oh, you're talking about so many things at once. You're kind of like disjointed. Well, because you guys are too stupid to understand that I've got a million things going on right now and I'm perfectly fine. I'm trying to take care of 5 things all at once. They were too stupid to understand that. And then they forced their way into this unit. And then, because I was in the process of changing out of my clothes when they showed up, when I had the door open, I took off my shirt and that's when they left. So let's call the E13 and see why 2 Boston police officers, 2 of them, not 1, 2 of them, illegally entered this unit without a search warrant and conducted an illegal search and entry. So back to the stupid lowlifes and the police. The police are so stupid that they actually believe what the retarded, no-life, low-life scum of this area tell them about me. And they don't even bother to fact check the lies and the defamation and the jealousy, the jealous hate-stalking trolls that are populating this entire building complex and that are so stupid, they don't realize who they're dealing with here. I have a PhD level education in clinical developmental psychology. I got that PhD level education while concurrently working 3 jobs for 6 years, 7 days a week. I don't think I even had 2 weeks off for 6 years because I was working constantly. And no, I never took any medication. I didn't need to. I just drank a lot of coffee. You have to be functional, not just functional, but polite and on top of your game when you even have 1 job. So if you have 3 jobs at the same time while obtaining a full-time PhD in clinical psychology, which is one of the toughest PhDs to get, then you do not have any mental health issues. And the pathetic, retarded, low-life trolls who watch my channel are going to say something like, oh, well, you can probably hide your mental health issues, but when you go to work and you do this, you do that. No, you can't. You pathetic idiots. You know nothing about clinical psychology. You're talking to someone who has a PhD level education and you think you're telling me something I don't know? These low-life retards are so stupid, they don't realize how stupid they are. They know nothing. Do they have PhDs? No, they don't. Do they have master's degrees? I'm willing to bet none of them do. I do. I have a master's equivalency in tumor biology and angiogenesis from Harvard Medical School, and I co-authored 13 scientific studies in the field of cancer research and tumor biology, and 1 PhD thesis in clinical developmental psychology listed and published nationally. So go kill yourselves, rejects. You're nothing but hate-stalking, low-life trolls. And I mean that with affection. And do I think that certain miserable, useless hate stalkers should go do society a favor and jump off a bridge? Yes, I do. Some people are so wasted that there's basically no hope for them, right? People who spend their entire lives stalking other people. Now that is a mental health issue. Why don't you just leave people alone? I certainly do. I am so good at leaving people alone. All of my videos are about me, right? That's how you know you don't have any mental health issues, except maybe, no, not even narcissistic personality disorder, because the diagnostic criteria for that personality disorder are pretty intense. And do I meet even 3 or 4 of those diagnostic criteria? Absolutely not. Okay, so let's try to get some answers from the Boston police about their illegal search and entry yesterday into this unit. And who the caller was, right? Who's the liar who called the police and made up a story about how I barricaded myself in my apartment and was...
Boston police, Atlanta supporters.
Yes, hi. I'm calling because 2 of your police officers showed up at my door yesterday evening when I was in the process of cleaning out my apartment. I had an inspectional services visit this morning and was doing a lot of cleaning and organizing. And these 2 officers forced themselves into my apartment after I asked them to stay out in the hallway. They conducted an illegal search and entry, and they did not have a warrant. I'd like to know why they were allowed to enter my apartment illegally.
What was the call for, ma'am? Why were they at your apartment?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm calling for some answers because I was simply minding my own...
To you why they were there?
Yes, they said somebody had called them and claimed that I had barricaded myself in my apartment and was inhaling bleach. But as I explained, I was cleaning my entire apartment including the refrigerator and the bathroom, and had to use bleach as a cleaning product. So
due to the severity of the call, ma'am, and someone claiming that you had bleach and alcohol out in the open, they do need to come in just to make sure you're not barricading yourself with those what's the word I'm looking for? Those solutions. Basically, they just need to make sure you're fine.
yeah, well, I was standing in front of them for 5 minutes explaining.
Explanation, and I'm giving you one. If you'd let me finish, that'd be great.
Okay, so you can finish. Go right ahead.
So they need to make sure you're not being held hostage. One, they need to make sure that you're not inhaling those solutions, and to make sure you're okay. So they do have to go through your home for the protective features to make sure everything's all right.
Well, my door was open when they showed up, and that's on the body cam. I asked them if they were using their body cams, and they said they were. So my door was open a foot. So I was obviously not being held hostage, and I was obviously perfectly fine, because when I came to the door, I explained to them I was in the middle of cleaning and organizing. I was actually changing out of my clothes, and they still forced their way into my unit. So I would like to file a complaint.
Okay.
You need a warrant to enter somebody's residence, and I did not show any signs of distress.
See that you're all right. They do not need a warrant for that.
I was perfectly fine. I was standing in front of them, explaining to them what I was doing.
So again, the officers had every right to do what they were doing. They were doing the well-being check. They were not doing a search. You needed a warrant for a search, not a well-being check, ma'am.
I'd like to speak to a supervisor, actually, because I was perfectly fine. So you see where the bias lies, right? I was perfectly rational. I have a video of that explaining that I'm in the middle of cleaning and I was changing out of my clothes because my clothes were dirty. And the officers still insisted they needed to get into my apartment. No, they don't. When somebody's standing in front of you and they're perfectly physically healthy, and they're able to explain that they're in the middle of doing something and there's nobody else in the apartment, the officers do not have the right to shove their way into your apartment. I am willing to bet $1 million that the law is on my side here. I might need to physically go in person to headquarters and file a complaint. Not to mention the officers were just rude. You know, they weren't trying to be nice. They weren't concerned for my well-being. They wanted to be assholes. I have it on video. This could take a while. I'm going to hit pause. Yes, hi. I'm calling because I'm a resident of the area. I am perfectly sane. That is a verifiable fact. And 2 of your officers forced their way into my living space yesterday evening without cause. And after I had asked them not to, because I was perfectly physically fine and was cleaning out my apartment while trying to change out of my clothes when they showed up. So I'd like to know why they forced their way into my apartment without a warrant.
Was it a well-being check?
Yes, it was, but I showed up at my door because my door was actually open a foot. I had the window and the door open. I was going in and out of the hallway. As I explained to the officers, I was perfectly physically healthy, and the door was already open when they showed up. They did not need to shove their way into my apartment without a warrant after I was verifiably.
They weren't there to cause you harm. They were there to make sure you were okay.
I was perfectly okay, as I explained to them, standing in front of them.
And all I can say is, thank God you're okay. But, you know, sometimes we go to these well-being checks and the person is really not okay. You know what I mean? Sometimes there's something really bad happening. So, you know, if they erred on the side of caution, it was not to be mean to you, or, you know, it was to make sure you were okay. Well, they don't know what they have till they get there, you know?
I understand, Sergeant, but when a person is standing physically in front of you, they're not drunk, they're not on anything, they're rational. I was explaining to them I had an inspectional services scheduled this morning. There was an inspection scheduled for my apartment, and I had been cleaning all day. I was dirty. I was changing out of my clothes. I asked them to stay in the hallway, and they physically forced their way into my apartment. That is illegal, and I'd like to file a complaint.
In an emergency situation, it's really not illegal.
But this was not an emergency.
Well, as far as they knew, it was an emergency. You know what I mean? Sometimes we get to a call, and it's much worse than we thought it would be. And sometimes we get there and it's much better than we thought it would be. And thank God you were okay, and it wasn't much worse than they thought. But I mean, they do have to make sure,
Officer,
they weren't doing that to be rude to you or anything else. They were doing that to make sure you were okay.
well, when I
And in an emergency, we don't need a warrant, And in a true emergency, and if that had been as the call came in, then I believe that it was a true emergency. So, and thank God it wasn't. Thank God you're okay.
Well, of course I was okay. There was never an emergency to begin with. Somebody lied when they called the police.
Yeah.
Whoever called made up a story.
Right. And I am sorry that happened to you. But as far as what their response was going to your house, like, we don't say, oh, let's go get a warrant to make sure that this person is okay. You know what I mean? We would force our way in. And it's not against the law. It's a matter of, if it's a life or death thing, which is kind of how they thought it was, I think, the way the call came in.
When they showed up, my door was open a foot, and I was standing in front of them physically perfectly well. I was not passed out on the floor. I was not bleeding. I was not incoherent or drunk. I was calmly explaining to them that I was cleaning my apartment and had to use bleach as a cleaning solution for my bathroom and my refrigerator. And at that point, they could have walked away because I was very visibly perfectly fine. They shoved their way into my apartment anyway.
Okay. I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't think what they did was wrong in this case. I am sorry that you think so, but if you consider it, we do have people who harm themselves, and I'm glad you weren't doing that, but we do have people who do that all the time. And like for them to be pushy about going the extra mile to make sure you're okay, I can't say they were wrong. They were just trying to make sure you were okay.
Right, but they should have assessed the credibility of the caller.
I understand what you're saying. You weren't happy about it because you were okay, but we don't know that. You know what I mean? We don't know that when we get a 911 call saying it's really potentially a fatal emergency. So I am sorry that it was like that for you, but I'm glad you're okay, and they please consider they were trying to make sure you were okay.
I understand.
But I can't stay on the phone, and I apologize.
Of course.
I can't stay on the phone, but
sure.
It really, that was with good intentions they did that.
Okay.
All right, and thank you very much
Sure.
for your understanding. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye. Okay, that was weird. Really? So when officers are trained to make split-second decisions as to whether or not they should use a firearm, right? They have the ability to quickly assess a threat. That's what they're trained to do. I hope that police officers are trained to assess a threat within a few seconds of arriving on the scene, right? That's how they know whether to pull out their gun or not. They all carry firearms. So when they showed up at my door after getting basically a fake, fraudulent call from some lowlife, pathetic liar who claimed I'd barricaded myself in my apartment, even though my door was open all afternoon, and I made a video about how the door was open and then posted it to YouTube hours before the police showed up. That pathetic liar claimed that I was barricading myself, and then the police showed up because they claimed I was barricading myself, but the door was open, and then I stood in the door and said, hey, yeah, sorry, I'm changing out of my clothes because I'm dirty and I've been cleaning all afternoon, and that's why I have bleach in my apartment because I'm cleaning my bathroom and my refrigerator. The police should have walked away. They should have had that training that, they obviously get if they need to use their firearm. They could have applied that training to my situation and said, oh, hey, okay, so this lady's door is open. She's obviously not barricading herself in her apartment. She's obviously standing in front of us. She's not passed out with a head injury. She hasn't stabbed herself. She hasn't tried to kill other people. She doesn't have a gun. She's not drunk. She's not stumbling around. Her eyes are not glazed over. Oh, and it looks like she's trying to change into a clean shirt. Maybe we should just leave, right? Wouldn't anyone with 3 brain cells figure that out within a few minutes, if not a few moments? Of me standing in front of them saying, hey, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of cleaning and I'm changing out of my shirt. Do you mind? I'm kind of dirty. Do you mind stepping into the hallway? They should have walked away, right? That is when you do not shove your way into someone's living space. When they're standing in front of you, explaining that they're changing out of their shirt because their shirt is dirty, they've been cleaning all afternoon, they have the inspector showing up in the morning, they need to get their apartment cleaned up, they're using cleaning products, and the window and the door are open. That's when any officer who understands how to assess threat within a few moments does their job properly. These officers did not do their job properly. That's what I have a problem with.